What we do is we have, if something is reported to us as potentially misinformation, important misinformation, we also have this third-party fact-checking program because we don't want to be deciding what's true and false. And for I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false, the distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could still share it, you could still consume it.
So when you say the distribution is decreased,
it got shared.
How does that work?
It basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely...
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's meaningful.
Okay. Now, you already know that story, the FBI reaching out to Facebook to censor a damaging story that would have hurt Joe Biden's election chances. What astounds me is that story isn't as lasting in the minds of the American people. The Federal Bureau of Investigation reached out to a social media company and told them to censor a story they knew to be true so Joe Biden could win an election. Do you understand what that means? Joining me now, Senator, one of the great ones, we don't have many, from the state of Wisconsin, Senator Ron Johnson. Senator, one of my favorite things about you is this is the kind of stuff that you've been all over for the longest time, not letting this stuff go, demanding answers. The federal law enforcement arm getting involved in elections for either party is the only thing that matters if you look at what the history of secret state police agencies is.
Well, the most egregious act of censorship and election interference was really what Anthony Blinken led as a member of Biden's campaign, contacting ex-CIA Deputy Director Mike Morrell, asking him to clean up the Hunter Biden laptop story. That's what generated the letter signed by 51 former intelligence officials, vetted within hours by the CIA, and allowed to go public. I mean, that actually impacted the election. I can't think of a more egregious example, a more blatant example of election interference. And those people still have their security clearances, which should be revoked on day one of President Trump's new term. And I've got a beef with Anthony Blinken because when we interview him about Hunter Biden, he blatantly lied to our committee. So he's lied before Congress as well. The current Secretary of State lied to Congress and prompted the most egregious act of election interference probably in our history.
Senator, what frustrates people is you just brought up the Secretary of State lying before Congress, committing these gross acts. No one ever seems to be held to account for these things. And it seems that we have a system in place that no matter how much you want, I mean, you're a United States Senator and you want people held to account. And it doesn't seem to be able to get done. What's wrong with our system that people in government are allowed to abuse these positions of power, abuse their positions of power, and nothing ever happens to them? Nothing.
Well, from my standpoint, I can't prosecute anybody. All I can do is try and investigate and uncover the truth, and refer it to the Justice Department. Part of the time I was chairman of Homeland Security, it was President Obama in office, and his Department of Justice wasn't going to prosecute. For example, he wouldn't prosecute himself, Eric Holder. So it depends on who's actually Department of Justice. I did the investigation of Hillary Clinton's email scandal. We're the ones that uncovered the editing of James Comey's exoneration memo. We changed gross negligence to extremely careless, so that wasn't didn't use criminal terminology. But when President Trump, and I don't disagree with this decision either, when President Trump got elected, he said, okay, well, Hillary Clinton, she paid a price. We're not a third world country. We're not going to prosecute our political opponents. Of course, that's exactly what Democrats do. So listen, I understand the double standard. I understand how frustrating it is for people. From my standpoint, all I can do is expose the truth. And I think I've been reasonably diligent, reasonably dogged in trying to pursue the truth.
No, you have been. So that brings me back to the DOJ, which is actually the main subject of all this, because that answer is always the same. I refer it to the DOJ, they do nothing. I refer it to the DOJ, they do nothing. So if we have a DOJ who only hunts down pro-lifers and doesn't actually clean out the corruption in the government, how do we fix that?
Again, we have a dual system of justice. So the Department of Justice did prosecute people for obstructing Congress, but it was a Democrat Department of Justice, and they were happy to prosecute Republicans. We haven't had that same opportunity, I guess, with the Republican Department of Justice or Attorney General. So we'll see what happens this time around. Again, to me, if it's clear violations of federal law, we will refer people who've committed criminal acts to Department of Justice for prosecution, and that's really kind of the what I've talked to these nominees about.
Speaking of the nominees, how hopeful are we that they're all going to get through? I know everyone wants them all to get through. I want them all to get through, but I understand the world in which we live. How is that looking?
Well, first of all, I think most Republican senators take the same viewpoint I do, is elections matter. We respect the convincing victory of Donald Trump, and it's up to Donald Trump to determine who he wants serving with him in his administration. We're not the ones that are going to pick the personnel. He does. Our job is to give him those people he wants to work with. And so I think that's the primary attitude, barring some egregious issue in the background checks. I'm anticipating they're all going to get confirmed.
What are we expecting from Pam Bondi? Pam Bondi, I know people are not that familiar with her. I am, but people don't know what she is. Is this the type of lady who is going to focus inward? Because that's most definitely what we need right now. We need someone to clean out the government.
Well, they really have, twofold task. They need to restore integrity to their departments. That's what Cash has to do. That's what she has to do as well. The way you do that is you do have to look and root out the partisan, the deep state actors. So that's going to be a big job. But also, she needs to equally administer justice. I don't want this flipping back and forth where now we're going to go out and we're going to be doing everything we can to prosecute political opponents. We need to prosecute criminals, sentence them equally, prosecute them equally, indict them equally. That's what the American people expect. Now, I realize Democrats don't do that, and it's frustrating for our supporters. And we just play by the rules. We want a single system of justice for people. And from my standpoint, that's what I expect of Pam Bondi. I don't expect partisanship there. But if we refer somebody, based on what we see, a criminal referral, I expect her to fully investigate it and, again, use her prosecutorial discretion.
What about the FBI? One thing that concerns me every time I talk to somebody who worked at the FBI is they say, look, the director of the FBI matters. He matters a lot, but so much of the garbage happens underneath the director, and the director doesn't even know about it. What can Kash Patel do if he takes over as head of the FBI? Because if you have a secret state police agency, you don't have a free country.
Well, again, we need to appoint as many loyal deputies who are willing, that are real fighters, that are going to go out and root out the deep state actors. That's what we need to do. But we also do need to re-decentralize the FBI. We need to send agents and prosecutors back out into the branches where the prosecutorial decisions aren't made with political considerations. I mean, that's what Obama, that's what Biden has done. They've brought these people into Washington, D.C. under people like James Comey, and that's where we've seen all the corruption, under Merrick Garland. So again, the American people expect justice. They expect an FBI that's primarily tasked with keeping us safe, investigating crimes, getting criminals off the street. That should be done on a completely nonpartisan basis.
Senator, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.